Welcome. We're glad to have you here. Our past Tools for Tomorrow meetings are recorded, and this is a BRC consortium. So we're NIAID BRCs that lead this webinar series, and each month you'll hear from one of us on something new that we've done, or just a new feature we want to share with you. Next month, we have a bit of a unique version. So we'll have our friends at NCBI presenting about GenBank, SRA, and GenBank and SRA submissions. So tune in for that one. It'll be an hour versus our half-hour format. So I'll send an updated calendar invitation for that. But we look forward to having you today. And so today I'm going to talk about a new to BV-BRC service, our Influenza Reassortment service. And typically if you've seen any of my presentations over the last few years, I go through how to actually step through it on the BV-BRC. Today I'm going to just stay in the presentation, but in the folder for this example, I have each step that I took in a written tutorial format. So if we'll see how that goes, and if that's something that we want more of, we can do more of that in the future. But welcome, and we're glad to have you. So before I start, the service that we're presenting today is built on the USDA Flu Crew's TreeSort service tool, and we're very thankful for them for developing this tool, especially Lexi Markin and Tavis Anderson. But I just wanted to start by thanking them, and if you use this service on the BV-BRC, definitely cite our friends over at the USDA. So I'll quickly go over what the BV-BRC is, what TreeSort is, how it fits into this influenza reassortment analysis, selecting a data set on the BV-BRC, running a service, and then the outputs. If you aren't familiar with the BV-BRC, we are data and then tools to analyze that data. So we pull in publicly available data, clean up the metadata, make it a little bit more useful and integrative for BV-BRC services. And then we have a long list of tools and services that you can run analysis on that public data or your own data. And so here's a list of our services from our menu. And throughout the presentation, I'll have screenshots from the BV-BRC so you can start to understand how things flow. But this service lives under our viral tools, and you can see it with that box around it. So thinking about influenza reassortment analysis, first I want to ground us in what TreeSort is and does. So TreeSort detects reassortment events by identifying both recent and ancestral reassortment events by analyzing phylogenetic trees built from a single reference genome segment. For example, you could use HA in influenza, but you could use whatever segment that you might be interested in. And then it uses a statistical hypothesis testing framework to detect branches where reassortment with other segment has occurred. And it maps those directly onto the phylogeny, and then you get reports about which gene segments were acquired, the genetic distances from the original segments, and that's counted in number of nucleotide differences. The core principles of how TreeSort detects reassortment, or the core principle that TreeSort runs on, is that if no reassortment has occurred, all genomic segments should share the same evolutionary history. So when that principle is broken, then you can infer reassortment. So you choose a reference segment, build a phylogenetic tree, and then choose a challenge segment and test whether the challenge alignment fits the reference tree. And you don't have to do this on a one-to-one segment basis. You can have a reference segment and then have all 8 segments as a challenge, or the other 7, or some combination of there. It looks for points where the evolutionary hypothesis breaks, like I mentioned, and expected mismatches between expected divergence time or the observed number of substitutions. So if explaining that challenge segment requires an implausibly high number of substitutions, then reassortment is inferred. This service is really accurate in simulation studies and really quick, so it processes tens of thousands of strains in minutes. So this is not something that you'll run and have to check back in hours. It'll run in minutes, and that's true on the BV-BRC, and it's scalable to hundreds of thousands of genomes. So the takeaway from all of that is TreeSort detects reassortment by identifying where segment evolutionary histories are statistically incompatible. And I want to spend most of the time thinking about the results, so I'm going to continue to go quickly through the background in running the service. Like I said, the steps are in a folder that I'll show you at the end, but want to spend most of the time dissecting the output. So as we're running the service, I wanted to highlight just thinking about the BV-BRC being a place where you can get data. When a lot of people go to the BV-BRC, and when I give a lot of presentations, we focus on the genome tab. But we also, for our segmented viruses like influenza, have a strains tab. And so this tab allows you to get, for a given strain, all of the segments that are associated with it. And so then you can filter on that, and which is a really helpful place to start for TreeSort. And so here's a view of that. And like I said, in the step-by-step, we go through that in more detail, but just wanted to tell people about our strain tab if you are unfamiliar. And you can download data here, set up a genome group, do any typical BV-BRC analysis from this tab. Has the same filters that our other data tabs have as well. So my goal for running this TreeSort example was to have a data set with segment representation from all the samples of interest. So I started on the strain tab, then made a genome group from that, prepped the FASTA for TreeSort, ran TreeSort, and generated results. Prepping the FASTA for TreeSort is going to be important if you're generating your own FASTA file, because TreeSort has some pretty specific inputs, but will not be that long for a step you have to do from a genome group. So currently in development is just going right from a genome group to run TreeSort, but we wanted to get TreeSort out to you all before that second level feature is integrated. So there's this little in between, making sure that the FASTA file is organized in the way that TreeSort needs. So going through each of these steps, I created a data set that had 8 segments that were complete, H3N2 only. I picked 4 random years just to get some diversity over time, all in the US and all human. And so that ultimately left me with this genome group with 1,600 genomes, representing 200 samples and 8 segments for each sample. And you can generate a data set as you wish with whatever filters you might be interested in. But just for the purpose of this, that's what my data set looked like. Like I mentioned, that prepping the FASTA file is important right now, but won't be forever. And so I download from the genome group table the FASTA file, and then also the header, the metadata associated, and then I ran this TreeSort reheader script, and then re-uploaded my annotated FASTA to the BV-BRC. So when you're running TreeSort, click Influenza Reassortment Analysis service from the menu, run the analysis with the inputs you need, and then make sure that you get that FASTA file validated for success. And so I have mentioned that TreeSort has some pretty specific FASTA input needs. So make sure that if you are running this service on your own data, that you know that the FASTA is formatted the right way. So segment names can only be PB2, PB1, etc. The segment names have to be surrounded by pipe characters, and the date needs to be in the format of year, month, date. So as an example, you can see this, A swine, Michigan, then the pipes, and then the dates. The TreeSort can also accept 3 different strain names for format within the FASTA header. So like the strain name is everything that remains after the segment name is removed, starting with epi, and a strain name starting with A, B, C, or D, followed by 3 to 5 spans of text inside the slashes, and no pipes in the strain. And so once you upload that data, if your FASTA file meets these requirements, then it'll get validated and you'll be able to run TreeSort. If there are any issues, then it will tell you what the issues are, and then you can reformat as needed. So once you set up that data set, then we'll generate results. So you'll see at the bottom of the BV-BRC your status for your job. So you'll be able to click there, the bottom of the page. That'll take you to your job status page, and you'll see your completed results. And you can click on one of those, and that'll take you to the output result for that job. And then you're able to view those in more detail when you click. And at the top of the page, there's that little view icon, and that will take you to, for any BV-BRC job, kind of the overview result or the most important result. That kind of gives you a place to start. And for this, that'll take you to that index.html file. So just to recap what we very quickly just went over, started with the strain tab, generated a data set, turned that data set into a genome group, turn that genome group into a FASTA file ready for TreeSort, ran TreeSort, and then generate results. And next we'll talk about what those results look like. So when you click that view icon, you'll go to the TreeSort analysis report. And so there's some background at the top of that, and then kind of a summary of what TreeSort was detecting. So there were 7 reassortment events in this 200 strain data set. And 8 multiplications that were resolved. So the original reference tree had 8 unresolved branching points, and TreeSort computationally resolved them into bifurcating branches, allowing the statistical testing of reassortment along specific branches to be had. The first result file that we're going to look at is this reassortment summary that's stored as a CSV file. So it has both the strain names that have the reassortment events, if there was a reassortment event for that strain, and if that reassortment wasn't certain, then there will also be a Y for that. And sometimes TreeSort doesn't have enough information to confidently place a reassortment event on a specific branch. So then TreeSort will, narrow down the reassortment to a particular ancestral node on the tree, but that will be something that we can look at closer on the tree. So here's that reassortment CSV file. We have those 7 strains that had reassortment events. 4 of them had uncertainty. And that's something when we look at the root to chip regression plots that we'll be able to kind of see where that uncertainty lies. But for this first strain, the reassortment was in NA. The second MP, with NS, and then another with MP. And so now that we get this overview of those reassortment events, we can begin to look at the tree and really see where those reassortment event lies. So like I said, this is kind of hard to see. And when you look at the Archaeopteryx view on the BV-BRC, you'll be able to scroll in more and get a better sense of your example. But the reassortment labeled in red at the nodes. So for example, this MP11, so that 11 is going to be the nucleotides that were different for the reassortment. And for this AUSA 95925, which if we go back to the table, you can see that is this reassortment event at MP, and that 11 carries over. The label color segments are going to be these ancestral inferred historical reassortment events, and those are at the branches instead of on the nodes like I discussed before, and able to be viewed further. Some of the nodes, just because of how it's zoomed, don't have the strings here, but Archaeopteryx has a lot of ability to manipulate your tree view so you can see whatever data you want. So I left this intentionally zoomed so the node isn't present, so that to tell you to play around with Archaeopteryx to be able to, if something doesn't look how you expect it, it might just be that things aren't zoomed all the way. And Archaeopteryx has that flexibility for you. So I encourage you to try that out. For the segments, there are these segment-based files that live in the files folder, and these files are here for you to view. They're all in one folder. And then for each segment, we have these segment-based files, like the alignment file, which this image is coming from the report, so you can also get to the segment-based files from the index report. And I include the alignment file, dates for in the FASTA def lines, rooted tree file, input tree file, outlier, any outlier data for that segment, a visualization of the root to tip regression, which is here's one example here, and then also that data in CSV file format. I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking through the root to tip regression. So for this example, for PB1, there weren't any reassortment events, which we've talked about now a couple of times. And the fraction of variation is 0.94, which implies strong clock-like behavior in high confidence trees. So R squared of greater or equal to 93, we can assume strong temporal signal. And so across most of the segments, there was strong clock-like behavior with the high R squared value. But I wanted to show you what it would look like for an example that did not have that strong R squared value. So this, oh, actually, next I wanted to show you, sorry, disregard what I just said. So here we can see another strong clock-like behavior, but also with a reassortment event. So for PB2, sorry, we had 2 reassortment events, and NP we also had 2 reassortment events. And so that we can infer that these reassortment events are likely because the trees are confident, where some of our less confident reassortment events might not have as high of an R squared value. And also by and large, the whole sample set might have a low R squared value. So this is a much smaller data set that was highly similar, and no reassortment events were found, and the time was much shorter, and so that has less reliable molecular clock behavior. So this is different than all of the others. That's why it's in this blue box, but I wanted to show you how different that R squared figure might look. Going back to our sample, if we think back to the CSV file, the MP reassortments were less confident. So there were 3 inferred reassortment events, but this R-squared value sits more in the middle, which may suggest weaker temporal signals or possible tree rooting issues. So one should be more cautious when interpreting these reassortments, and potentially do further analysis, like segment-specific phylogenies, look at the metadata further. The slow clock signal may inflate reassortment inference, reflect rapid or regular evolution, and be conservatively interpreted. So I will quickly go over to the BV-BRC just to show you where this analysis lives so you can review it further on your own. The service, like I said, is under viral tools, influenza reassortment analysis. You should be logged into the BV-BRC to run services so you can save your jobs. We have a lot of summaries and tutorials that I'll show you in a couple slides that will talk you through all of this, but if this is your first time here, this is what the BV-BRC job or service looks like. Select your input data. The input data that I used for this example lives in BV-BRC workshop, webinars, tools for tomorrow, influenza reassortment analysis input data. And so you could click here to run this analysis on your own. And then we see that my FASTA file was validated, that there are 8 segments with 200 valid strains. And this is what the FASTA header looked like. And if any of this doesn't work or doesn't look right, we can help you with that. Then you select an output folder and name and run that job. Like I said, the jobs are down here at the bottom. And then here is that example job. For a BV-BRC job, you can select the parameters to see what you submitted. And then all of those files are, the output files are here, and then that view icon will take you to that index. You can see the reassortment CSV, the tree, Nexus file for the tree if you want to do that, anything with that. Those root to tip regressions for each segment. Can see that some tips will be ignored, which wasn't something I showed before, but just wanted to highlight for you. And I also wanted to point you to the philo-XML tree in Archaeopteryx. So you can change the label colors to reassortment. So then you can see that to get, so like I said, that we'll change that label colors to segment. Actually, that's how I had it before. And then the node fill color to is reassorted. And then you can zoom in and out to expand the tree to get all of the labels there. But as you move around Archaeopteryx, you can move this around, you can collapse nodes. There's a lot of functionality in here that I just want to point you to. And if you get stuck with any of the functionality, you can click on that guide, and then that will step you through all of the different functionality of Archaeopteryx. So to recap what I did very quickly in 25 minutes, we went over what the BV-BRC is, this influenza reassortment analysis service, running a BV-BRC job, interpreting output, and next steps. One last thing I want to show you in that tools for tomorrow influenza reassortment analysis service is that quick tutorial that stepped through everything I did in preparation for this job. So feel free This isn't as fancy as some of our other BV-BRC tutorials, but I wanted to give you a quick kind of step-through guide to generate that same data set and the results. And this is really just kind of like, where do I click? And so that is there for you, along with the header script and an example of the output data of the same. I'll also upload this presentation in that folder, so you can click through these links, but you can dive deeper into just getting comfortable with the BV-BRC, searching for data. As part of our Back to Basics webinar series, we have help documents for all tools, the Archaeopteryx specific help documents. Follow along with the BV-BRC on LinkedIn to stay connected with us, and also have a command line help document. So again, I want to thank the USDA Flu Crew for this awesome tool, and we're really glad to have that in the BV-BRC. And if you use it, sign your friends over at the USDA, and also the whole BV-BRC team, especially Don Dempsey, who is the reason this service is implemented in the BV-BRC. We're very thankful for him. And I'm happy to stay on if you have any questions. I know that was a lot of information quickly, and I hope that you try out our new service.